Hello, welcome back to Writer Makes Videos. My name is JM Testa, and today I'm just going to kind of talk. I didn't have anything planned for a video today. I'm in the middle of doing my nails, so if I'm looking down a lot, that's going to be it. I just wanted to talk, have it be a little more of a impromptu video today. I have some content lined up that I think is going to be maybe not exciting, but hopefully it's at least helpful or interesting. That's the aim that I have with this channel. And I guess that's what today's talk is going to be, really, is how I see the future of my channel and my content going forward, and also just a conversation on the creative experience in general. Now, if any of you have been supporting or watching my journey from the beginning, you will know that I had the idea for my very first book, The Destined Road, about 7 years ago now. I was sitting in a cafe. I was just desperate to get out of the house at that point. I was on crutches because I had surgery on my leg, or my foot, I should say. I got into an accident a while ago during that time, and I was just desperate to be out of the house. So I went on crutches in an Uber and went to a cafe to just sit down and try something. And from that, I wrote the first inklings of what would become the book that I would later publish in 2024. With that, after a year of publication, I've gotten some reception to it. I didn't expect to be an overnight success. Overnight successes aren't really a thing. That's a myth, so don't pay attention to that. If you are a writer and you are worried that no one is going to read your work, because they will. It just might take some time to gather an audience and things like that. But that's the other thing about being a creative, at least in today's world of capitalism and, just you gotta make some money in order to stay being a creative, right? And that's the hard part, because I didn't know it at the time when I first started determining what I wanted to do with my life, determining what I wanted to create. I always knew that I wanted to be a creative person. I was drawing ever since I could hold a crayon. I love the art of creating. I knit, I paint, I have done calligraphy, I've done jewelry making, I've done so many things that are inherently creative, and they've all just sort of been hobbies. Writing was never one of them, even though I was... So I want to say that I was good at it because I was good in my English classes and things like that, but that's not really the same thing. But writing has found itself to me in very strange ways. So in university, when I was getting my undergraduate, I was going for a biology degree. And then I thought, well, what am I going to do with this? And then I thought, oh, maybe a chemistry degree or something. And then, to make a long story short, I ended up getting a bachelor's of English. And I loved it. I loved every minute of it. But I still never saw myself as a writer. I wrote incredible essays. I did write some creative writing because it was just par for the course, really. But it still never struck me that writing was going to be the core of who I am as a human being. Is the thing about writing that I think people talk about a lot, that is like, oh, it's this, you feel it and you have to do it. And maybe it's just the circles that I'm in, but if you don't feel writing, or really any creative process, so very deeply, I think you haven't then found the creative process for you. And I say this with all of the love in the world. I think everyone has an opportunity to be creative in any way, and any shape, and any form, and, any medium. Like, if you want to just write a book to say you wrote a book, there is nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with it at all. It's the expectation of what comes after. And I think that's the problem with the marketization that has happened to books. And now, again, don't get me wrong, I say this with all the love in the world, I think Book Talk has done some incredible things. I think it has truly just made reading cool. I think, and for a lot of people like myself who did fall away from reading, like I read a lot when I was a kid, fell away during high school and university. I really only wrote because I had to, or read, I should say. I shouldn't read. That's what I'm talking about. I only read because I had to. I never picked up a book for fun for a long time until about like a year ago or a couple years ago. I'll say maybe a couple years ago. I didn't read a whole lot, but I had finally read The Lord of the Rings for the first time. And it was just like something clicked again, you know? It felt like, oh yeah, being immersed in just imagination. It just does something internally to me. And it would be my hope that people who get into writing feel the same way. Because otherwise, if there's no passion in what you're writing, if there's no like visceral reaction that you get when you put words to a page, when you hear a soundtrack that would just fit so perfectly within the world that you're creating, I would caution you to maybe reconsider. And I know maybe that's a bold statement to make, because I did also say that if you want to write a book just for the sake of writing a book, absolutely do it. It's like running a marathon, you know? But running a marathon, you got to train a little bit, right? And people forget that the arts, though so inherently human and so inherently necessary to live, they require a training of a different kind. And there's very technical, like, techniques and things like that in writing. And if you're interested, I've put a couple of videos up on, just sort of my tips and tricks on how I learned to write and what I've employed for, the books that I have written, am writing. But there is an element of practice. And, I did at some point think that my book was going to be a bestseller because I believe in it so much. And I'm not saying it won't ever be. It's hard as an indie author to try to make that happen if you're not a marketing guru or a constant on social media and things like that. Because nowadays, to get anyone to read your work, you've got to be loud and you've got to be very in people's faces, especially if you're an indie author, because it's all on you. You don't have a marketing budget. Unless you're fortunate enough to give yourself a marketing budget. You got to do it yourself. You got to make connections. You got to go out. You got to really do it. And that takes a lot of time. It takes a lot away from just the joy of writing. I love sharing my tips and my tricks on writing. I love sharing bits and pieces of my writing progress with people. I really do enjoy social media for that reason. I've found a lot of really great writers, all of my ARC readers have come directly from social media, and they've been incredible human beings that I would have never met otherwise, and who have shared my work with other people and have given me the highest praises in just being a writer, which is, as a creative, that's a really nice thing to hear, and it's a really nice thing to experience. But it has taken a lot just to even get to there, They are my customers at the end of the day. And that kind of sucks. Like, you always want to present that you're really, at least I do. I like to present that I'm really open, that I really enjoy hanging out with my audience, that I really enjoy connecting with people, because my stories at their core are meant to connect with other humans. Like, that's what it's for. And to reduce all of that to postings and art reveals and just begging people to buy my book, it doesn't give the same message that I want my books to give. If you don't know anything about The Destined Road, it is a classic high fantasy that is very similar in the vein of Tolkien and The Lord of the Rings in general. It's the same kind of progression. It's a story of good versus evil and love and loss and betrayal and survival. It is all of those things, except it is a female queer-led cast. That is That is the difference. And I think that there's a lot of depth that comes with that. I don't want to sell myself short and just say it's a ripoff of The Lord of the Rings, because I have been told numerous times it is not a ripoff of The Lord of the Rings. It is just, you feel that same familiarity. And that was one of the big things that I wanted to drive home when whenever I would market my book. It feels like coming home. It feels like experiencing the fantasy books that you love, that you grew up with, for the first time again. It's accessible to read. It's vivid. You've got characters that you can fall in love with easily. You've got lore that you get to dive into instead of just being spoon-fed. And I think that I'm a good writer. And, I'll be bold enough to say it. I think I am a good writer, even if the audience isn't that large. I have 50 of you on here. I mean, a lot of you are my personal family members, and thank you for being here. But that's 50 people in a room. That's a crowd, that's bigger than most classrooms. And that's the bit of it, isn't it? That's the strangeness that comes with trying to be a creative in this day and age, is that it just gets lost to numbers. I don't like that. It's been such a journey just to get myself to be confident enough on social media and on this YouTube thing that I'm doing as well. It's a lot to do. It's a lot to take in, and it's taken away from my writing, which is the biggest part of my life. After figuring out that being a writer is exactly who I'm supposed to be. And the marketplace makes you feel like a failure if you're not constantly striving for #1 on Kindle Unlimited, or, higher rankings on Goodreads, or being on people's lists, or, striving for that illustrious publishing deal. I can't see myself being that way with my writing. I want it to find people. I want it to meet people where they are. And I want them to feel like this spark of hope within those pages is meant exclusively for them, that it's not just a fad, that it's not just something that everyone's talking about because they have to, but because it genuinely makes people feel something, because it genuinely inspired them in some way. And on the note of being a creative in this, marketplace, you've got to support yourself on the side too. If you're not, making a ton of money from your art, which is a whole other conversation in and of itself. I would love to make a living from my art. Make no mistake. If I could write full time for the rest of my life and put a roof over my head, keep my partner and my pets happy, and deliver stories that made the world feel a little less bad, that is exactly what I want to do. That is the whole point of it. And I don't know if people see that. I don't know if most writers in this economy feel that way. Maybe they do. I know a few in my personal circles who do. There's a lot of people who are just trying to capitalize on the success of writing a book. I know a lot of influencers who had never expressed any interest in writing a book, suddenly touting that they are writing one, that they accidentally stopped recording. I have no idea where we left off, but I'll reiterate the point that I was making. I know influencers who have never before expressed any interest in writing. They're not even really book talkers. They're just influencers. And all of a sudden, there's an influx of them who are so eager to write a book, fantasy book, a big epic tale that they've been dreaming about for years. They've just never been the right time to write it. Okay. Has it though? I think the commodification of books in the book talk space has been toxic to the art of writing. I think it has been good for the interest in reading. I think it has been culturally significant for bringing people back into a love of the written word. I think it's done a lot of that. But it's also brought to light the grubby fingers of publishers and the grubby fingers of people who want to capitalize on this new trend of reading, as if it should have ever gone out of style to begin with. And I think as a result, people who have done this work of building up an audience and done this incredible amount of effort in just being an influencer, suddenly there's a pressure to capitalize on it, capitalize on their success of building an audience and doing things like that. What seems to be the easiest way to do it nowadays is writing a book. And I think, well, for people like me who have been quietly trying to discover the inner workings of myself and trying to bring a lot of research and effort to the page, it feels cheap. And I'm allowed to feel salty about that. There's a lot of people who might disagree with me, and that's all right. Look, I'm saying that everyone can write a book. Just to be clear, everyone can write a book. If everyone wants to, everyone should. I have no qualms about doing that. I just think what gets prioritized in this world seem like unfortunate cash grabs. And it has really muddied the waters of what people should pay attention to. And yes, people can make their own choices. Yes, there is validity in all kinds of writing. I believe this to be true. Maybe I am just salty that my book hasn't done as well as I hoped. That doesn't stop me. And that's the thing. When people see that their book hasn't done as well as it should, most of them quit. They quit writing because it's hard. Writing is difficult. Coming up with, especially if you're like a classic fantasy writer, oh my gosh, coming up with all the different components of world building and all of the pieces that you need to put into a classic fantasy story. It's crazy. It's bananas. And the point that I'm trying to make with all of this isn't the part about the money, isn't a part about the churn in literature, the churn in fads and capitalizing on successes. I think it's burning out the passion, the restless need that writers should be experiencing, and I think are not. I think that writers are chasing a dream, very well could be a dream they've had for a very long time, but I think they are chasing a dream that doesn't have the same kind of heft behind it because of what this incessant need for marketing and artwork commissioning and things like that, what that has done. AI is a whole different conversation. I will save that for another one. But I think, you know how people are saying to bring back yearning in books? The pining, the small touches, the subtle glances instead of this insta-lust sort of thing. I think the same is true for like authors in general. You need to yearn for your own book. You need to yearn for the story you are making up. I know people who boast that they wrote a book in 6 months. It's like impressive, but also, did you feel it? It's like when a dog eats too fast, eats a treat too fast, and you're like, did you even taste that? You even know what you got? What you got in front of you? I think that's what it is. If there's anything, I suppose, that I was trying to get at in this conversation, in this rant, apologies, I will have more structured content in the future. I am just in the middle of transitioning back into corporate work. I got a job in the corporate sector again. It is a contract role, so could be done in a year. We will see if it does not extend, but we shall see. So it's been a little hectic trying to get that going, get The Shattered Shores finished, which is book 2 in my series, and produce content on top of that, because you need to produce content for people to read your work, That's the point. That's where we're getting, is this constant need to make content. Like, I love doing videos. I think it's an incredible amount of work that just allows me to connect with people in a new way. It lets me talk out loud and to myself, but also at some point it's going to reach someone else's ears, so I don't seem entirely crazy just sitting here by myself and chatting away. I like some of it. I like some of the aspects of it. I think that it has bolstered authors in a way that never would have been possible before. I think there is a lot of good that can come from it, but I think it also takes away the yearning for your own work. And I think that's the crux of the problem. And even I have felt it at some points, just because when you're in this community, you're immersed with both success stories and not so successful stories. People who are, hitting it big with the big publishing deals and selling thousands of copies in pre-orders and things like that, and having really cool marketing campaigns. And you just sit there and you're like, I can't do any of that. And I'm here to tell you that's okay. I'm here to tell you that if you have the want and the drive, you have the deep, deep love of putting words onto a page, the deep, deep love of exploring the unknown, the deep, desperate yearning to never give up on writing, that you will be okay, that people will find your stories, that they will love them, and that even if your success is not today and not tomorrow and not the next day and not a year from now, that it will come if you don't quit. And I'm counting on that for myself as well. Hard to remember sometimes, but it's so deep in here that I have to ask myself, even if nobody else read a single word of what I wrote, would I stop writing? And the answer is no. I would not stop writing. I would collect my own books on my own shelf, and when I am long dead and buried, hope that somebody else picks them up at the end of it. But even if I was the only one and I took all of my stories to the grave, I will still have been so very proud of myself, pulling all of that together, for finding new pieces and corners of myself and my soul that I wouldn't have found otherwise. Writing is very much a reflection of the author. Writing is so very intimate and very visceral in a way that, because I have experienced other forms of other mediums of art, and I have shared them with the world, and they don't, at least for me, could be different for other people. For me, writing is way more difficult, and it's way more visceral. It is demanding, unceasing, in a world that oftentimes wants to get rid of the written word because of how powerful it is. I think that should tell you all you need to know about being a writer and the responsibility that you carry just by being that. And that you shouldn't look to it to be a cash grab. You shouldn't look to it to, I don't know, to be seen. Yeah, I don't know. Because is it really me that you're seeing in my books? Maybe it is. There's definitely parts of me in there. Parts of my soul, parts of, yeah, but not to be seen in a limelight sort of way. I think there are authors who are famous, obviously. See, it's difficult. And that's kind of the beauty of writing in the writing community. You can feel a bunch of different ways. And you might never have all of the words. You'll never have all of the words to describe what it all does, to describe what it all makes you feel. And that's kind of an exciting part about it. Anyway, this is a really long-winded rant. I'm not completely done with my nails, but I painted them red to match my jumper. Anyway, if you've managed to sit through it this long, I will leave you with this. If you are a writer, considering being a writer, have an inkling of a thought, of a ghost, of an echo, of a memory, of a concept, of writing something, do it with heart, not expectation. Do it because even if you want to just accomplish it and say, I wrote a book, I did it, I wrote a book, doesn't matter what it is, what it's about, nothing. Even if all you want to do is just be able to say that you wrote one, write it with heart. Because even if it is just a mark, a tally of things that you've accomplished in your life, it will be the one that changes you the most. It will be undoubtedly the one that you look back on fonder than anything else you have accomplished. And I say that as somebody who has accomplished quite a bit in my life. I'm young, I'm 30, but I'm young-ish. And looking at my book on my desk, it is one of the greatest things I've ever accomplished. It is a piece of me that I did not know was possible to exist until I finally did it. And I look back on it fondly and often. And it reminds me that even in the darkest of times and in the scariest of circumstances, there is light and possibility within me. And I think that's the power of writing. Yeah, I think that's the power of writing. Anywho, thank you for chilling this long with me. Like I said, I will have more structured content in the future, I promise. Just been kind of a crazy time getting back into corporate work so I can afford things and afford to publish my own books and things like that, because that's just kind of how it works. And, I wish it weren't. But it is, I consider that part of writing the hobby part, the buying artwork and the actually putting it together into a book. That's the part of this little hobby that I've got going on that is my entire life. Yeah, that's it. And I need money to support my insane hobby. So That's all I've got for you today. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy this content, or if you'd much rather get more structured content, I do have other videos up that you can check out about the writing process, about indie publishing, etc., etc. And I will have more in the future, theoretically every Wednesday. I'm hoping I can keep to that schedule. Thank you so much for being here. If you'd like to connect, I am at JMTesta on Instagram. That is where I'm most active. That and Threads, kind of whatever, wherever you find me is great, and I will be happy to see you there. If you are interested in getting a copy of The Destined Road, my website will be up hopefully in the next month or so. It's another part of needing a job so I can afford my website fees. But for now, you can find my book on my Ko-fi for free. I will have it linked down below, and you can just go in there. It says to buy it, but it is free, completely free. You can download the EPUB and be on your merry way. If you have read The Destined Road at all and you haven't left a review on Goodreads, I don't normally ask this, but I would really appreciate if people did do that, just so perhaps it might reach other people. If you don't, that's fine. I appreciate you regardless. Thanks so much for sitting here for my rant, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.